I came home from the hospital, my body still aching, my legs trembling with every step, the surgery incision burning beneath my clothes. I had spent 11 days admitted, 11 days fighting an infection that nearly took me, fighting the fear of not waking up, fighting the loneliness of those white walls where no one, not a single soul, had come to visit. Gregory, my son, my only child, never showed up. Michelle, his wife, didn't call, didn't text. Nothing. When the doctor discharged me, I had to ask a nurse to call a taxi because there was no one waiting. No one. I arrived home with the foolish hope of finding at least a note, a hot meal, some sign that someone had cared. I opened the door slowly, carrying my bag with the few things I had from the hospital. Silence greeted me first, then the shock. There was a second refrigerator in the kitchen. It was large, modern, and gleaming, planted right next to mine, the old, faithful fridge that had worked with dignity for years. I froze, staring at it. I couldn't understand. Gregory walked out of the living room with a can of beer in his hand, acting like nothing was out of the ordinary. Michelle followed behind him, carrying a roll of adhesive labels and a permanent marker. They didn't even look at me. "What is this?" I asked, pointing at the new appliance. Gregory took a long gulp before answering. "It's our fridge, Mama, for our things." "Our fridge?" I repeated, unable to believe it. Michelle knelt in front of the appliance and began sticking labels onto every shelf. She wrote her name in big, thick letters. Mich, Mich, Mich. On every shelf, every drawer, every available space. "Exactly," she said without turning around. "This is for our groceries, the ones we buy with our money. We don't want them getting mixed up with yours." I felt the floor shift beneath my feet. I still had the surgical stitches pulling at my skin. It still hurt to breathe deeply, and here they were, marking territory in my own kitchen. "But this is my house," I whispered. Gregory let out a dry laugh. "Yes, Mama, your house. But we live here too, remember? And frankly, with your meager Social Security, you can't buy the kinds of things that we like, so we decided to get better organized." Michelle stood up, admiring her work. Every label shone like a slap across the face. "Don't be offended, Elda. It's just practical. You buy your stuff with your money, we buy ours with ours. That way there are no mix-ups." "Mix-ups?" My voice cracked. "I have never, ever denied you anything from my refrigerator." "We know," Gregory said, crushing the empty beer can. "But this way is better, more organized, more fair." Fair. That word resonated in my head like a broken bell. I looked at the old fridge, mine, and then at the new one. Two worlds divided, two realities separated by an invisible but brutal line. The haves and the just surviving, the ones who matter and the ones who are in the way. "Besides," Michelle continued, opening the new fridge to show me the interior, which was stocked with fine cuts of meat, imported cheeses, and expensive wine. "We have certain standards. We don't really like to eat the same things as you. No offense." No offense, as if those words could soften the poison. Gregory approached and patted my shoulder condescendingly. "Relax, Mama. It's nothing personal. It's just that, well, you're not young anymore. Your pension barely covers the basics. We need more. We deserve more." Deserve. Another word that pierced me like a knife. I wanted to say something. I wanted to scream that I had worked 35 years in a textile mill, ruining my back to give that man everything he needed. I wanted to remind them that I sold my mother's jewelry to pay for his private college. I wanted to cry and ask them how they could treat me this way after everything, but I didn't say a thing. My body was too tired, my heart too broken. The surgery stitches throbbed, reminding me that I had barely survived something terrible. I didn't have the strength to fight. "I'm going to rest," I murmured, dragging my bag toward the little room in the back. "Sure, Mama, rest," Gregory said, already turning toward the living room where the television was waiting. Michelle closed her fridge with a satisfied thud. The sound echoed throughout the kitchen, throughout the house, throughout my chest. I walked down the hall, feeling every step like torture. The back room was tiny, barely fitting a twin bed and an old dresser. It used to be my sewing room. Now it was my exile, Gregory and Michelle had moved in a year ago. "Just until we find something better," they'd said. They never found it. Instead, they gradually took up more and more space. First my master bedroom, then the living room, then every corner of what had once been my home. And I let them, out of love, out of fear of being alone, out of the stupid hope that things would get better. I sat on the bed, and the tears finally fell. Hot, bitter, silent. From outside, I heard their laughter, the television blaring, the sound of the new refrigerator opening and closing, the clinking of wine glasses. They were celebrating. I didn't know what. Maybe they were celebrating finally putting me in my place. Maybe they were celebrating that they no longer had to pretend respect. Maybe they were celebrating that the inconvenient old woman had accepted her fate without a fight. I lay down slowly, every muscle protesting. I closed my eyes, but I couldn't sleep. The images kept playing like a cruel movie, the fridge with the labels, Michelle's satisfied smile, Gregory's glacial indifference, the words they had thrown at me like stones. "Your meager pension. We don't want to mix our things with yours. You're not young anymore. We deserve more." Every phrase was another nail in the coffin of our relationship. Every word confirmed what I already knew deep down but refused to accept. To them, I was no longer a mother. I was a burden, an obstacle, someone to exploit until the last drop was squeezed out. And the worst part was, I had allowed it, year after year, abuse after abuse, humiliation after humiliation. But something shifted in that moment. Something broke inside me as I lay on that narrow bed, in that dark little room, in that house that no longer felt like mine. A decision began to form, slowly, firmly, inevitably. I opened my eyes in the darkness, and a certainty filled my chest. They had made a mistake, a terrible mistake. They thought I was weak. They thought I had given up. They thought they could do whatever they wanted without consequences. But they were wrong. In the morning, when they woke up, they would see something they would never forget. In the morning, they would learn who Elda Johnson really was, and that lesson would cost them everything. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those labels. Meek, 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 like cattle brands, like declarations of ownership over something that never belonged to them. I stared at the cracked ceiling, listening to their laughter coming from the living room. They were watching some program, drinking wine from that new fridge, enjoying their small victory over the useless old woman, because that's what I was to them now. A useless old woman with a miserable pension. 68 years old, a whole lifetime of work, and this was my reward. Tears kept falling, but now they were different. They were no longer sadness. They were rage, indignation, something that had been buried for years and was finally beginning to awaken. I remembered when Gregory was born, 42 years ago. I was 26. His father, Bernard, worked in construction, and I worked at the textile mill. We lived in a tiny apartment, but we were happy, or so I believed. Gregory was our miracle after 3 losses. I cared for him as if he were made of glass. I gave him everything, absolutely everything. When Bernard died 15 years ago from a sudden heart attack while at work, I thought the world was ending. Gregory was 27, already an adult, already with his own life, but he promised to take care of me. "You'll never lack for anything, Mama. I'll always be here." Lies. It was all lies. The first few years after Bernard's death were hard, but manageable. Gregory would visit, take me to the market, fix things around the house. Then he met Michelle. She arrived like a hurricane 8 years ago. Pretty, self-assured, ambitious. She worked in cosmetic sales, but lived as if she were a corporate executive. Expensive clothes, perfect nails, hair always styled at the city's most exclusive salon. From the beginning, I noticed something in her eyes. A coldness, a constant calculation. She looked at me, evaluating how much I was worth, what she could get from me. "She's a little intense," I told Gregory once, trying to be gentle. "You're just jealous, Mama. Michelle is incredible. She's exactly what I need." Jealous? I was worried, but he refused to listen. They got married 6 months after meeting, a costly wedding that I helped pay for because he was my only son and deserved the best. I gave them $10,000 of my savings, money I had saved for years working overtime. "We'll pay it back, Mama, as soon as we're stable." I never saw a penny back. After the wedding, visits became sporadic, calls became brief, but requests for money multiplied. "Mama, we need $1,000 for the apartment deposit." "Mama, the car broke down. We need $3,000 for the repair." "Mama, Michelle needs urgent dental work. It's $5,000. Always urgent, always necessary, always presented with guilt if I hesitated. "You don't want your son to have a decent roof over his head? Would you rather we drive a dangerous car? Do you want Michelle to suffer with a toothache?" And I paid, over and over again, because he was my son, because a mother's love has no limits, because I was afraid that if I said no, they would disappear from my life forever. When I retired 2 years ago, I thought I could finally rest. 35 years at the textile mill had left me with arthritis in my hands, chronic back pain, and a pension of $800 a month. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Bernard, my late husband, had left me this small but paid-off house in a quiet neighborhood, my refuge, my security. Then the pandemic hit, and everything changed. Gregory lost his sales job. Michelle lost hers too. Suddenly, they showed up at my door with suitcases. "It's temporary, Mama, just until we get back on our feet. A couple of months." A couple of months turned into a year, and in that year, everything rotted. In the beginning, they paid for some expenses, bought food, helped with the bills, but little by little, they stopped. "We're looking for work, Mama. It's tough out there. We barely have enough for ourselves." But Michelle kept buying new clothes. Gregory kept ordering imported beers. They both went out to expensive dinners while I ate eggs and bread. Then came the territorial takeover. First, it was the master bedroom. "We need more space, Mama. You can sleep in the back room. It's cozier." Cozy. What a cruel word to describe that tiny drawer. Then the living room. "We're putting our new television here. Yours is too old." My television worked perfectly. Theirs was unnecessary, but it arrived anyway. Gigantic, noisy, invading my space. After that, they started controlling the kitchen. Michelle reorganized everything. She threw out my old pots. "These things are hideous, Elda. So embarrassing." Those were the pots I had cooked for Gregory with his entire childhood, the ones Bernard gave me on our first anniversary. I saw them in the trash and didn't say a thing. I swallowed the pain, just as I had been swallowing everything else. The requests for money continued, but now they were different, more aggressive, more demanding. "Mama, I need you to lend me $2,000 for a course that will help me get a job." "Mama, Michelle needs a new phone. Hers doesn't work anymore. That's $1,000. "Mama, we have to pay the credit card or they'll sue us. $4,000 urgent." Every time I hesitated, the emotional blackmail started. "After everything I've done for you, any mother would do this for her son. If you really loved me, you wouldn't hesitate." And the worst of all, the one Michelle said with a poisonous smile, "One day we'll be the ones taking care of you, Elda. You'd better be generous now." Generous. I had been so generous that I had almost nothing left. My savings evaporated. The $30,000 I had accumulated over decades of sacrifice were gone in 2 years, spent on whims, luxuries, and lies disguised as needs. 3 months ago, I tried to access a separate savings account I had, one Bernard opened for emergencies. It had $6,000, my last reserve. It was empty. "What happened to the emergency account money?" I asked Gregory, trembling. He barely looked up from his phone. "Oh, I used that to pay off some debts. I was going to tell you." "How did you get into that account?" "It was mine alone." "You gave me your password years ago, Mama. Don't you remember?" I didn't remember. Maybe I gave it to him in a moment of trust. Maybe he took it from a ledger. It didn't matter. The money was already gone. "Debts for what?" I insisted. "Things, expenses. Don't worry about it." Don't worry about it, as if I were a stupid child who understood nothing. That night, I cried until I had no tears left. I cried for Bernard, who had worked so hard to keep me safe. I cried for myself, for allowing all this. I cried for the son I thought I had, and who no longer existed. And now, after 11 days in the hospital fighting for my life, without them showing up even once, I returned to find this: a divided refrigerator, labels marking their contempt, words confirming what I already knew. To them, I was garbage, a depleted resource, someone to continue squeezing until nothing remained. I sat on the bed and took a deep breath, ignoring the pain of the stitches. Something inside me had fundamentally changed. The Elda who always yielded, who always forgave, who always put her son first, had died in that hospital bed. The woman who returned was different, tougher, clearer, more determined. They wanted a war. They would get one, but not tonight. Tonight, I needed to rest, to think, to plan. I closed my eyes, and finally sleep came. It was heavy, dark, and filled with dreams where I was strong and they were crying. In the morning, everything would change. In the morning, my retaliation would begin. I woke up before dawn, 5 o'clock in the morning. The house was absolutely silent. Gregory and Michelle were still sleeping in my bedroom, in my marital bed, under the sheets I had bought with my first retirement check. I got up slowly, feeling every muscle protest. The surgical stitches pulled, but the pain didn't frighten me anymore. I knew there were worse pains than the physical. I walked to the kitchen like a ghost. The new fridge shone in the dim light. Those damn labels reflected the little light coming through the window. Mish, mish, mish. I opened my old half-empty fridge, a carton of milk, 3 eggs, some cheap cheese, bread from the day before. That was all I had to eat. My $800 pension went to medicine, utilities, and the loans Gregory extracted from me every month. Then, just to confirm what I already knew, I opened their fridge. Stocked. Absolutely stocked. Imported steaks, salmon, shrimp, 3 types of imported French cheese, wines that cost more than $50 a bottle, exotic fruits, gourmet bakery desserts, premium deli meats. I closed the door, feeling a mix of rage and disgust. They ate like royalty while I survived on scraps. They indulged in luxuries while I counted pennies to buy bread, and they did it in my house with my money under my roof. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table. I needed to think clearly. I needed a plan. I could kick them out. It was my house. It was legally in my name, but Gregory had made me sign a paper 6 months ago. It's just to update the will, Mama, to keep everything in order. I signed without reading properly. I trusted him. I had always trusted him. What had I really signed? I didn't know, and it terrified me. I could leave myself, find a small apartment, leave them with the house and disappear. But with what money? My pension barely covered survival. Rent would leave me on the street. I could confront them, shout everything I felt, but I had tried that before. It always ended the same way. They would deny, manipulate, and make me feel guilty for doubting their love. Mama, how could you think that of us? We're taking care of you, can't you see? You're so ungrateful. No, I wouldn't fall into that trap this time. I heard a noise upstairs. Footsteps. They were waking up. I quickly retreated to the back room and closed the door. I didn't want to see them yet, not until I knew exactly what to do. I lay down again, pretending to sleep while listening to their morning movements. The shower running, Michelle yelling at Gregory because he used her expensive shampoo, Gregory responding with indifference, the two of them arguing over who would make breakfast. No one mentioned my name. No one asked how I had slept. No one knocked on my door to see if I needed anything after 11 days in the hospital. I simply didn't exist to them. Around 9 in the morning, I heard them leave. The front door closed forcefully. The car started and drove away. I waited 10 more minutes to make sure they wouldn't return for something forgotten. Then I emerged from the little room. The house was a mess. Dirty dishes in the sink, clothes scattered on the sofa, food wrappers everywhere. They had eaten smoked salmon and cream cheese for breakfast. The remains were on the counter, uncovered, attracting flies. I cleaned mechanically, not because I wanted to, but because it was what I had always done. Clean up their messes, gather their trash, erase their tracks. As I washed the dishes, I looked out the window and saw my neighbor, Renata Hayes, watering her plants. Renata was 71, a widow too, living alone, but she looked happy, always smiling, always dressed nicely, always at peace. We had known each other for 20 years, but we had never been very close, just polite hellos, comments about the weather, nothing deep. But in that moment, seeing her there with her watering can and straw hat, I felt terrible envy. She had what I had lost: dignity, autonomy, peace. As if she had felt my gaze, Renata turned and saw me in the window. She waved. I waved back weakly. Then she did something unexpected. She put down the watering can and walked toward my house. She knocked on the door. I hesitated. I didn't want anyone to see me like this, destroyed, humiliated. But something compelled me to open it. "Elda, hello," Renata said with a warm smile. "I saw you got home from the hospital yesterday. How are you doing?" How was I? Such a simple yet impossible question to answer. "I'm improving," I managed. Renata studied me with those wise eyes that had seen too much life. "May I come in for a moment?" I don't know why I said yes. Maybe because I desperately needed to talk to someone who wasn't Gregory or Michelle. Maybe because her gaze contained something I had forgotten existed: genuine compassion. We went into the kitchen. Renata saw the 2 refrigerators immediately. Her eyes widened in surprise. "That's new," she commented, trying to sound neutral. "It's for my son and daughter-in-law. For their things," I explained, feeling the shame burn on my cheeks. Renata didn't say anything for a moment. She just observed the labels with Michelle's name. Then she looked directly at me. "Elda, forgive me for being direct, but I need to tell you something I've wanted to say for months." My heart sped up. "What is it?" "Your son and your daughter-in-law. I hear them sometimes. The walls aren't that thick. I hear how they speak to you, how they treat you." I lowered my gaze. The humiliation burned in my throat. "Last night," Renata continued, her voice soft but firm, "when you got home from the hospital, I heard everything. I heard what they said to you about the fridge, about your pension, about your groceries." Tears started to fall before I could stop them. "And I heard something else." Renata approached and put her hand on mine. "After you went to sleep, I kept listening." "What did they say?" I whispered, even though part of me didn't want to know. Renata took a deep breath. "They were celebrating, toasting with wine, and Michelle told Gregory something that chilled my blood. She said, 'It won't be long now. The old woman can't last much longer. When she dies, this house will all be ours. It's worth at least $200,000. We can sell it and finally live well.'" The world stopped. Renata squeezed my hand, and Gregory laughed and said, "I hope she hurries up. I'm tired of pretending I care." Something broke inside me. Not my heart. That was already shattered. Something deeper, more fundamental. The illusions, the hopes, the idea that somewhere, beneath all the cruelty, my son still loved me. "There's more," Renata said. "I've seen things, strange movements. 2 weeks ago, I saw Gregory leaving the bank with papers. He looked nervous, and Michelle has been getting large packages, boxes and boxes. She sneaks them into the house when you're not around." "What kind of boxes?" "I don't know, but they're many, and they look expensive."